We are back with another FPL video. Finally, it's been over a month. It's been such a long time, and the last piece of content I did was for UCL Fantasy ahead of the Champions League final. And I didn't actually talk about my season review or how I did in the end of Gameweek 38. So I'm going to do a brief recap on my performance in the final game week of the season for the 2022-23 season before moving on to a preliminary draft ahead of the new upcoming season using FPL.team. So these prices will be predicted. They won't be the official ones, and FPL is set to release in early July. And once that's the case, I will be ramping up the content with more videos and streams ahead of the new season 2023-24. Sounds ridiculous saying that already. I hope you're enjoying the summer break, and also thank you very much to all the support throughout the last few years, especially over the last season, which has been tremendous. So all the patrons, channel members, those that like the videos, engage in the live chats and comment sections, those that subscribe to the channel, thank you very much for all the support. We're looking to get to 20,000 subscribers ahead of the new season, and I think we can do that fairly soon as well, especially once we get into the business end and into the first few game weeks. But thank you very much for all your support as always. Let's now go into a brief recap, and then at the very end I'll talk about my current draft using FPL.team. Both of my goalkeepers had a very poor fixture in Gameweek 38. Kepa Arrizabalaga facing Newcastle. It was a 1-1 draw in the end. Kepa got that save point, but Raya, who was sitting on my bench, kept a clean sheet against the Premier League champions in a 1-0 victory. So I lost out on 3 points from that decision, but not too many regrets. I still would have started Kepa. I thought Man City would score despite having a heavily rotated team. In the end, I lost out on 3 points. I tend to get these goalkeeper decisions right, and hopefully going into the next season, I can also get any of these 50-50 calls spot on. It wasn't a great week for my defence. Trent Alexander-Arnold got 4 points, which is pretty decent. He picked up that assist in a 4-4 draw against Southampton. It seems like such a long time ago as well, but that did happen. Southampton obviously relegated, and Liverpool just missing out on that top 4 spot, and they're looking to push on next season, and they will be one of the favourites to maybe challenge Man City for the title. But Trent Alexander-Arnold had a very good end to the season personally, getting a lot of assists and bonus points in the process ever since he started playing in this inverted role against Arsenal, and even for England over the international break. You could see Trent playing in the midfield, and that could be a future for him even going into next season as soon as Game Week 1, and an out of position Trent of course will be even more enticing. But with Liverpool and Trent Alexander-Arnold and the way Jurgen Klopp will set up the team, you still would expect him to start as the right back but play that inverted role. Liverpool are heavily linked to a move to Szoboszlai from Red Bull Leipzig, and of course they have signed McAllister already, so they're looking to bolster that midfield. But in the future you have to say Trent is looking like a really good candidate for that position, and he's always going to have that assist threat in FPL, and that's why he's going to be the most expensive defender, as he tends to be every single season. Then we go to the other 2 defenders, and Botman got a bonus point despite obviously conceding to Chelsea in that 1-1 draw, and that's not too shabby of course, but just nothing really to stand out in the defence. And then you look at the final defender, Trippier. He scored an own goal that put Chelsea ahead before Newcastle eventually equalised, and it was a bit frustrating. I thought Newcastle would win that game, but in the end it didn't change much in the league table. Man United finished 3rd, Newcastle finished 4th, and Newcastle will be looking to build upon this heading into next season with the Champions League, and also the signing of Tonali, which looks like a great signing, and Newcastle will also be looking to get other deals done as well. But a really poor showing from my goalkeeper and backline. Let's see how my midfield fared, and hopefully it was much better. Despite being the most captain player in Gameweek 38, Salah was quite underwhelming. Liverpool scored 4 goals, and yet he only got a solitary assist, but still another attack in return. And just like Trent Alexander-Arnold, Salah had a very good end to the season, and what looked like a very underwhelming campaign for him, he yet again managed to get double digits in goals and assists. He's always up there for the numbers, XG, goals scored, and also in terms of goal contributions in general. And if it wasn't for Harry Kane and Erling Haaland, I think Salah would have got a lot more credit for his season, performing in a struggling Liverpool side for most of the campaign. Bruno Fernandes managed to score against Fulham and get 3 bonus points. He's actually got a very good record against Fulham. He scored a brace against them in the FA Cup and also got an assist at Craven Cottage, and he managed to top things off with yet another goal contribution against them at Old Trafford in the final game of the season. And Man United were trailing. Marcus Rashford though was underwhelming. He did blank. The same goes for the other midfielders I bought, like Eze. It was a close call between him and Odegaard. And Odegaard got the clean sheet point in a 5-0 victory against Wolves, but not much to separate those two in the end, so not many regrets there. And also I sold Batoma and kept McAllister, who also blanked, so not really too much to complain about. That was my midfield 5. A lot of blanks, as you can see, throughout the whole squad, but Bruno Fernandes, Salah and Trent getting me something at least. And then we go to the 2 forwards, and the main reason why I ended up getting a green arrow was because of one certain man up front. One of the most frustrating players for me in FPL last season was Isak, because ever since I got him in, not enough returns, and actually, if anything, a lot of 1 and 2 pointers along the way, and it was Callum Wilson who stole the show. I had that 50-50 call as well, around double game week 36, I think it was, for Newcastle. I went for Isak over Wilson, and the rest is history. Those that captain Wilson in that game week would have cemented a very good position or a great rank rise from that point, and I think ever since that happened, I was kind of resigned to just staying around where I was. And I think since game week 30, maybe even before that, I was stuck in a limbo of around 100k, and I was never really able to push on fully into 50k and then beyond that. And I think some of these decisions, like going for Isak over Wilson, played a huge part in that. But looking on the bright side, I did have Harry Kane for his 16-pointer against Leeds United, a fantastic way to end the season. And let's not forget, also against Norwich the season before that, in game week 38, Harry Kane did extremely well. So he's definitely someone to target for the final day of the season. But even not only that, throughout the whole campaign, he's been so consistent, and he didn't finish too far behind Erling Haaland in terms of goals scored and also in terms of FPL points. So there's actually a genuine debate to go for Harry Kane over Erling Haaland, especially in certain game weeks where maybe Man City will rotate a little bit more. But as we saw last season, Erling Haaland played pretty much every single game when he was available, and also when Man City was still in contention or fighting for the Premier League title. But Harry Kane has definitely been one of the best assets last season. It's a close score between him and Erling Haaland. That was my starting 11. Let me talk about the captaincy, my final rank for 2022-23 season, and then looking ahead to the preliminary draft, which is going to be much different to what you see here. Luckily, I did get a rank rise for game week 38, that green arrow I was looking for, because it was like 5 or 6 consecutive red arrows to end the season. But game week 38 was a little bit better. I think I went from around 87k to 77k, 54 points overall, not too great. And I captained Salah over Harry Kane. I was actually debating going for Kane in the last few minutes of the deadline stream. You can see it there as well. But in the end, I went with Salah. I thought we'd do extremely well. Liverpool scored 4 goals after all against Southampton, but Salah wasn't heavily involved, which was a big shame. But still, a decent end to an otherwise underwhelming season, I would say. This is actually my worst rank since I've started playing week in, week out in FPL, and it's still a decent rank overall. I'm not going to complain about it too much, but it was my worst rank, and I'm looking to improve upon this ahead of the 2023-24 campaign, and that's where the preliminary draft comes in for FPL.team. I'm already experimenting with some different formulas. Let's see what we can conjure up using this website. I'd highly recommend it to you as well, because you can also visualize your team in future game weeks. So without further ado, let's jump straight into this draft. This draft will be heavily dependent on the price predictions from FPL.team, and Aaron Ramsdale comes in at 5 million. And then you look at other goalkeepers like Raya, he's going to be 5.5 million according to FPL.team. You've got Alisson at 6 million, Edison at 5.5. Nick Pope is at 5, and that's a viable alternative to Ramsdale. But Newcastle have worse fixtures to start the season, and despite Pope being a better FPL option than Ramsdale, I think the fixtures are enough to go for the Arsenal shot stopper instead. And on top of that, you look at the other Arsenal defenders like Ben White, he's predicted to come in at 5.5 million. The same goes for Zinchenko, Gabriel and Saliba. So that means Ramsdale is the best cost-effective option, arguably, alongside Ben White to cover Arsenal's defence. So I think Ramsdale could be a very good shout and a very popular option heading into Game Week 1. But of course, it does depend on the final prices released by FPL. And if Ramsdale comes in at 5.5 million, I probably will look elsewhere, despite him still remaining a solid option. But it all depends on the extra value you can find. So if he does come in $500,000 cheaper than a lot of the top options like David De Gea, Raya, Alisson, etc., then I think Ramsdale is where I'll go. I've probably gone very heavy on the defence in terms of the amount of investment in here, but Trent Alexander-Arnold is always worth that 7 to 7.5 million price point. I don't expect him to get a price drop despite how poor Liverpool were, because he had an incredible end to the season, and you know his bonus points and assist potential. So I don't think he'll be 8 million or 8.5 as we talk about every single year, unless FPL want to suddenly change their policy, make the template a bit harder to get to, because it's going to be so expensive to get some of these best options and premium Williams in the defence, midfield and attack, but I think he will stay at 7.5 million, and that's what FPL.team also suggest with their price predictions. And facing Chelsea away first isn't the greatest fixture to start the season, also with Pochettino having his first game in charge of Chelsea, and it's going to be a home game for him. But Chelsea-Liverpool tends to be a 0-0 draw. Now, I don't think that'll be the case here. I think there could be goals in this one, but Trent is kind of a long-term investment, and despite Liverpool having a bit of a mixed bag in terms of fixtures, I would expect Trent Alexander-Arnold to plough through with some clean sheets and also some assists. I think Liverpool will improve upon last season and potentially creep into third or fourth, maybe even higher, but it all depends on their investment. Do they secure that Szoboszlai deal? Do they also add on top of McAllister? Because I still think they need a little bit more, especially in the midfield and defensively. And let's not even forget to mention they have sold some key players like Firmino up front, but they do have some quality players up there who will now be available from Game Week 1, like Luis Diaz and Diogo Jota. But Trent Alexander-Arnold for me is the standout Liverpool option alongside Mohamed Salah. Then we go to the other defenders. John Stones could come in at 5.5 million. If he does come in at 6 million or above, I will not be going for him, and instead I'd be looking elsewhere. Maybe try find a gem in the Man City defence, because they tend to get the most clean sheets. Their problem is Pep Guardiola loves to rotate, and it could be the case of John Stones being managed and rested in certain games, like against Everton last season, for example, which was still a crucial game that Man City needed to win away from home. John Stones was on the bench, and the same goes for other key players like Jack Grealish and Kevin De Bruyne. But Burnley away is actually a decent fixture. It will be Vincent Kompany's first home game in the Premier League, and of course facing his old club, and also a lot of other different factors. Burnley's return to the Premier League, but I think Man City will get the job done, and they have a tremendous record against Burnley. I'm not sure how many goals Man City have scored without reply, but it is absolutely ridiculous. So it's kind of like a 20-0 aggregate scoreline. It could be even worse than that. But John Stones, I think, is a solid option. I think he'll play most games because of how important he is to Man City's build-up, playing this inverted role from right back. And of course, Man City will be looking to strengthen their team, as they always do, and they are the team to beat every single year. And let's see if they can actually do something that's unprecedented in the Premier League, and that's doing a four-peat, winning the Premier League 4 times in a row. I think they've got a really good chance of doing it, and let's see if anyone can stand in their way. Then we go to the other defenders. Luke Shaw could come in as much as 6 million, which seems a bit steep because he typically doesn't have a great FPL points record, but he was really good last season for bonus points and also for clean sheets. Man United only conceded 9 goals in Premier League home matches, and Wolves had one of the worst away records last season. They were in the bottom 3 away from home, so I think Luke Shaw has a great chance of a clean sheet in this fixture, and also in some of the other fixtures to come, like Game Week 3. You look at some of these plum home fixtures and you expect Man United to keep plenty of clean sheets. So I think Luke Shaw could still be worth that 6 million price point, but it's still obviously a bit steep, and it could also affect the players you get in the midfield and the forward line. And the final defender, another expensive one at that, is Pervis Estupiñán, who could come in at 5.5 million according to FPL.team. But Brighton have some very good fixtures to start the season, with Luton at home, probably the best fixture you could ask for, arguably. And I think Estupiñán, even at 5.5 million, could be worth it with the bonus points, the assist threat. He can get the occasional goal, and I think Brighton will keep a few clean sheets in the opening 5 game weeks of this season. So that's a solid backline, arguably a bit too good because it does affect the midfield and the forward line, but it's a very solid backline overall, and I'd be very happy with this come Game Week 1. After a tremendous season for the Gunners, there's going to be plenty of price rises for Bukayo Saka, Odegaard and Gabriel Martinelli. They're facing Nottingham Forest at home first. They've got a few tough fixtures on the horizon like Man United in Game Week 5, but they've also got some very good fixtures mixed in between. And I think Arsenal could do well in any fixture. Of course, they had a very poor end to the season. They tailed off. They lost grip of the Premier League title, but I think they will bounce back. They're making a lot of good signings. Jurrien Timber could be fantastic and understated. Maybe not a great FPL signing, so to speak, or a great acquisition in this game, but I think he could be really important to how Arsenal defend and build up from the back as an inverted right back, or playing as a centre back alongside William Saliba or Gabriel. So Arsenal could suddenly have a bit of depth in the defence. They've also got Tomiyasu, let's not forget, and they've got Kieran Tierney still. And as for the midfield, they're looking to add Declan Rice. That's very close to being completed. Kai Havertz has been signed, and Mikel Arteta has explicitly stated that he could be playing as a midfielder, and that's what he's been been signed for to bolster that position. So that could be a fantastic signing as well. Very risky, the Kai Havertz one, and he was really poor at Chelsea, but I think he's actually going to do very well at Arsenal. It's kind of a gut feeling I have. But Martinelli for me is still probably the standout FPL option. According to FPL.team, he could come in at 8.5 million, and the same goes for another Arsenal midfielder in Martin Odegaard. And as for Bukayo Saka, he could be as expensive as 9.5 million. Still worth the money, but you'd also try find the extra value. And if Odegaard and Martinelli are 1 million cheaper, I would just go for those two, and I think I'd be very happy with that. And you could arguably go for 2 or 3 Arsenal players to start the season. You don't have to necessarily, and like I said, there are some tough games to come. They could still drop off from last season, but I'm quite confident they will start well. They're getting the signings in early. They're going to be embedded in pre-season, and I think Martin and Odegaard at least will perform very well, get plenty of goal contributions. The Arsenal defence still has a lot of question marks, especially without William Saliba, but he should be back fairly soon. Let's see how he develops and recovers from his injury. But I have to say, Martin and Odegaard for me could be 2 of the best midfield options once again, as they were last season. Then we've got 2 other midfielders to complete the starting 11, starting with James Maddison, still in his Leicester kit here, but he has joined Tottenham Hotspur for 40 million, and with Spurs also selling Harry Winks to Leicester, they kind of essentially got him for 30 million, you could argue. That could be a top signing. I think Maddison could add a lot of goals and creativity from the midfield, which Spurs have lacked for many years now, even with signings like Lo Celso, which haven't really worked out. I think James Maddison could be the key to unlocking defences and deep blocks, which Spurs tend to struggle against. So I think Maddison, away to Brentford, which is a tough fixture to start the season, and Brentford could well win this game, I still think he could do very well, and also beyond in the weeks to come. It's actually quite funny because last season in Gameweek 1, Maddison got an assist against Brentford to start the season, but Leicester were at home in that regard anyway. The final midfielder, and one that's going to be very popular next season, will be Matoma. Despite a price increase to around 7 million according to FPL.team, I think he could do extremely well in fixtures like Luton at home. He had a pretty poor end to the season FPL-wise, but I think Matoma will kickstart once again. You've also got Solly March at potentially 6.5 million, and you've got a few other options around this price point, like McAllister at Liverpool. And let's not forget to mention Maddison, who could be 8 million yet again. I think that could be a fair price for him, maybe even 8.5 million. But that is a very solid team so far, dare I say. Of course, there will be some repercussions on the bench and the forward line, which isn't as good as I would want it to be. But I think this could be a blessing in disguise, making it more difficult to get Trent, Salah, Kane, Haaland all in the same team. And that could cause some divisions and also a breaking of the template, which hopefully isn't as big this season. Last season I made a mistake because I kept talking about Erling Haaland versus Harry Kane, and I was giving Erling Haaland the edge, but guess what happened? Come Gameweek 1, I went for Harry Kane, and then I saw Haaland score a brace against West Ham. I was on holiday. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to make the transfer now. As he's scoring the goal, I'm making the transfer, and I kind of made that switch, and it didn't really turn out the way I wanted to, and that already set me back quite a lot for the remainder of the campaign. Now, I'm not going to say if you go for Haaland over Harry Kane, that's a big mistake, because both of them will score a lot of points. If Harry Kane stays in the Premier League, he is going to be right up there for the Golden Boot, and of course, both of them have had their injury issues in recent seasons. Of course, in the last year, both of them stayed fit for the vast majority of it, and that's why they were so consistent and performed so well. But ideally, you would have both Haaland and Harry Kane, and in future drafts, especially when the prices are released, I may yet try to include both of them at the same time. But currently, I'm going for Erling Haaland. I can't also fit in Harry Kane, unfortunately, but that could definitely change in the next few videos I release. But I think Burnley away is still a good fixture for Haaland. He tends to do better in home games, but it doesn't really matter. He can still score braces and hat-tricks eventually away from home, and I think he will do it this season. The other forward that's going to be very popular potentially is Mbeumo, who could be as cheap as 6.5 million, and with Ivan Toney suspended until January, Mbeumo will be the main man up front. And let's not forget his great performances towards the tail end of the last campaign, including that amazing performance against Spurs in the penultimate game of the season. So I think Mbeumo could be a quality player here. Facing Tottenham at home isn't the greatest fixture on paper, but I think Mbeumo will probably score here or get some goal contributions, and he is someone I've got my eye on, and I never really talked about him last season, but I think this time round it could be completely different, especially with a lot of the top forward options being more expensive, like in Nkunku potentially, Gabriel Jesus, Harry Kane, etc. Erling Haaland, by the way, could be as expensive as 14 million, and that's what FPL.team have got him priced at the moment. Now, it could still be 13.5 million or 13 because FPL probably still want this to be mainstream, accessible for most people, easy to build, kind of an initial 11 with your dream players. So that's still going to be up in the air. If Haaland is 13 million, it will be easier to bring in a Salah or a Harry Kane on top of that. But if he's 14 million or above, that's where things get very interesting, and it's going to be very difficult to build kind of an ideal team, and we might be struggling even come Game Week 1. Now all that's left is to talk about the bench and the captaincy. So I've got Walton, the Luton Town goalkeeper there. It's going to be interesting to see who is the first choice between him and Shea. Let's wait and see. If any Luton Town fans are here as well, then be sure to provide your thoughts down in the comment section below. I've also got Jensen, Pinnock and Taylor. So I've got 2 Luton Town players here alongside 2 Brentford players on my bench and a triple up overall with Mbeumo. It is a first draft. There will be issues. My forward line isn't ideal despite me advocating for Mbeumo. I've also got no premium midfielder, so there are definitely some issues, but I think the positives of this is a very solid back line where I cover arguably 4 of the favourites to finish in the top 4 in Arsenal, Man City, Liverpool and Manchester United. Also a good option in Purvis Stupinian there. 2 Arsenal midfielders, James Maddison, who I think could do very well from an FPL perspective at Spurs. Then you've got Mitoma, a good budget option, you could argue, if he comes in at 7 million. And I've also got Erling Haaland and a decent option up front. But there are issues. I think my bench is still fairly weak. And I also don't have that premium midfielder, as I just said. And I would really much like to have Harry Kane in the starting 11. But that's something we have to build and evolve in the upcoming videos. And once FPL is officially released, that's where we can talk more in detail and with more confidence, because these are all preliminary price predictions. They could be completely off the mark, and it could be much easier to build the team we want than what we see here in FPL.team. In terms of the captaincy, I'll probably go for Erling Haaland away to Burnley. It might seem a bit boring, but I think that's the way I want to go here. And then the vice captain would be on Gabriel Martinelli. But I think an Arsenal midfielder against Nottingham Forest at home could be a fantastic differential captain, so to speak. It might not be differential per se, but compared to Erling Haaland, I think anything could class as a differential captain. But I think this is a very solid attempt at a preliminary draft. But of course, it doesn't mean anything until we get the final prices. As I typically do in these team selection / draft videos, I'm now on FPL.team to show you how this team would look like in the game week beyond the one coming up. So in game week 2, this is how my team would look like, and it looks fairly decent. Not the best, it looks a bit worse than it does in game week 1, but still fairly decent. You've got Ramsdale away to Crystal Palace, and Arsenal tend to struggle in this stadium, but they did win 2-0 last time out. Trent Alexander-Arnold at home to Bournemouth. It was a 9-0 victory for Liverpool last time. I don't think that will be the case this time round, but you just never know. John Stones at home to Newcastle. Pinnock away to Fulham. Estupinian and Mitoma away to Wolves. Maddison at home to Man United, and I've got Shaw currently benched here in this kind of project team we've got going. And we've also got Odegaard and Martinelli away to Crystal Palace. Haaland at home to Newcastle, and also Mbeumo away to Fulham. So a lot of double and triple ups here in the starting 11. So a lot of eggs in kind of the same baskets. That could also be a potential issue. Maybe I need a bit more diversity, especially in the midfield, but it's still a fairly solid draft. The bench isn't the worst in the world. I've got Luke Shaw and Jensen in here too. I could even feasibly start Jensen over Pinnock. Taylor's just going to be a kind of budget option, and he's always going to be third on my bench. In essence, the same goes for Walton there. He's only there if I really need that 4 million goalkeeper to come in. But I think Ramsdale will do just about fine anyway. So that is my first draft, you could say, preliminary, whatever you want to call it. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Which players do you have currently in your FPL.team drafts or any other sites you may be using? What do you think the prices will be for all the players you have seen on screen here, and also those that have been discussed in today's video? Do you think Kai Havertz will be a midfielder or a forward in next season's FPL? Let me know, because there are so many questions that are yet to be answered, and they will all be covered on this channel with price reveals, with the team selection videos, best free hit teams, best wildcards, rating your teams. There's much to come on this channel as well. UCL fantasy content for those of you that are interested too. I'll be talking about how I did in the upcoming UCL fantasy videos, because it was actually a pretty decent end to the season for me there too. But that is my current 11, and also a fairly decent bench for Game Week 1 and 2. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it or found it useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe if you're new. Let's try to get this video to over 300 likes. Let's keep on pushing towards 20,000 subscribers and beyond. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and check all the links in the description below for the Patreon, channel memberships, Discord server, and the FPL League. All of that is there once the FPL League, of course, is formed. I'll see you very soon for Game Week 1 content, and once FPL is released, things will definitely start to ramp up with more videos and live streams headed your way. Take care, enjoy the football, and I'll see you very soon.